My dad gave the $4 million business I built from scratch to my sister because she had kids, so I walked away. I'm Selena, a 33-year-old woman who recently found herself entangled in a family drama that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about trust and loyalty. My dad, whom I'd considered a mentor and business partner for over a decade, dropped a bombshell that completely destroyed my world. Let me paint you the picture. My dad, Dominic, is a 65-year-old master carpenter who's run a small woodworking shop his entire life, ever since I was fascinated by his craft, the smell of sawdust, the precision of his cuts, the way raw lumber transformed into beautiful furniture. While other kids were playing with dolls, I was in Dad's workshop learning about grain patterns and joinery techniques. My older sister Brittany, who's 39, took a completely different path. She went to college in Boston, got her business degree, and landed a corporate job in Manhattan. Growing up, she was embarrassed by Dad's blue-collar work. She'd refused to tell her prep school friends what our father did for a living, making up stories about him being an interior design consultant. When I'd help Dad in the workshop on weekends, Brittany would roll her eyes and tell me I was wasting my time with grunt work. But here's the thing. It wasn't always like this between Dad and Brittany. When she was 15, she got mono and was bedridden for months. The doctors were genuinely worried about complications. Our whole family was terrified we might lose her. During those long weeks, Brittany only wanted Dad by her side. He'd sit with her for hours, reading her favorite books, bringing her homemade soup, never leaving her alone when she was scared. They bonded during that time in a way that changed everything. After she recovered, Dad continued favoring Brittany, even though she'd grown up to dismiss his profession entirely. It didn't matter that she'd make snide comments about his dirty hands or suggest he should upgrade to a desk job. He still treated her like she hung the moon. I noticed this favoritism early on, and honestly, it hurt. There was this one time in high school. When I made it to the state championship for my debate team, I was so proud. Our school hadn't had a state qualifier in over a decade. When I told my parents, Mom hugged me tight while Dad smiled and said, "That's great, sweetheart." I mentioned how the tournament was on Saturday and parents were invited to watch. Mom worked double shifts at the hospital. I looked hopefully at Dad, but he hesitated, glancing at Mom, who asked if he could be there for me. Dad cleared his throat and said he'd promised to take Brittany shopping for her college interview outfits. Mom looked annoyed and told him shopping could wait. This was important. Dad nodded reluctantly the night before the tournament. Mom reminded Dad about it over dinner. That's when Brittany piped up, asking if Dad was really going to abandon their shopping trip. She went on about how this was her future, how she needed the perfect outfit to make a good impression, and how she'd been looking forward to their father-daughter time. Dad's resolve crumbled instantly the day of the tournament. I reminded Dad one more time before leaving for school. He assured me he'd be there, that I shouldn't worry. But as I stood on that stage delivering my final argument, I scanned the audience, desperately looking for his face. He never showed up. I tested Mom, saying Dad wasn't there. She called, immediately concerned something had happened to him. When I got home, I walked into the middle of a screaming match between my parents. The tension was so thick. You could cut it with a knife. Mom was furious. "Where were you, Dominic? You promised Selena you'd be there." Before Dad could answer, Brittany walked in carrying shopping bags from Nordstrom, looking completely unbothered. Mom turned on her. "Really? You dragged your father to the mall while your sister was competing at state?" Brittany shrugged with that entitled attitude. I'd grown to hate. I needed professional clothes for my interviews. It's not like Selena debate thing. Was that important? That's when Dad made it worse. Instead of apologizing, he defended Brittany. "Look, it's not a big deal. It's just a high school debate tournament. There will be other competitions." Brittany needed interview clothes for her college applications. That's her future. We're talking about... Those words hit me like a physical blow. My own father was dismissing my achievement, something I'd worked months to qualify for, as if it meant nothing. The casual way he brushed aside one of the proudest moments of my life left me speechless. I managed to smile weakly and tell him it was okay, that I understood, but inside, I was dying. I retreated to my room and cried harder than I had in years. Mom came to comfort me, holding me while I sobbed about feeling invisible in my own family. "Your dad messed up," she said softly, "but your achievement is real, and I'm so proud of you. Sometimes people make mistakes, but that doesn't diminish what you've accomplished." This pattern repeated throughout my life. Dad would make efforts to treat us equally after Mom confronted him, but he'd always slide back into favoring Brittany. Despite the constant disappointment, kept trying to win his approval. I genuinely loved woodworking and carpentry, partly because it seemed like something he valued, but mostly because I found real joy in creating beautiful things with my hands. After high school, I went to trade school for cabinetry and furniture design, while Brittany went to her fancy college. When I graduated, I came back home and started working with Dad in his shop. I was 23, full of energy and ideas, ready to help him grow what had always been a small local business. Dad had 2 part-time employees and maybe 6 regular customers when I started. But I had vision. I introduced digital marketing, started an Instagram account showcasing our work, reached out to interior designers and contractors within a year, tripled our client base. Over the next decade, I poured my heart and soul into transforming Dad's little workshop into a thriving furniture and cabinetry business. We went from $180,000 in annual revenue to just shy of $4 million this past year. We now employ 28 people and have a waiting list 6 months long for custom furniture. While Dad still does the hands-on woodworking he loves, I handle everything else: client relations, design consultations, business development, getting finances. I work 60-hour weeks, split between the workshop and our new office space. This business became my baby, my life's work, my future. Last year, everything changed when Dad filed for divorce from Mom. They'd been arguing more and more over the years, and their marriage finally reached its breaking. It was devastating for our family. But honestly, I wasn't completely surprised. What did surprise me was how quickly Dad started dating after the divorce was finalized. He went through a series of relationships with women young enough to be his daughters, each one more concerned with his newfound wealth than anything else. 5 months ago, Dad called both Brittany and me for what he said was an important family dinner. We gathered at his new condo, a sleek modern place that was nothing like the cozy family home. We'd grown up and the atmosphere was tense from the moment we sat down. Dad cleared his throat and announced, "I have something important to tell you both. Vanessa and I got married last weekend." Brittany and I exchanged shocked looks. Vanessa, his latest girlfriend, was only 31 years old, just 2 years younger than me. She was a former Instagram influencer who had been charming Dad for the past 6 months with her talk of living life to the fullest and deserving the best. "You got married without inviting us?" I asked, trying to process this news. Dad looked defensive. "We wanted something small and intimate. How Vanessa is about big crowds." I knew exactly how Vanessa was. She was calculating and manipulative. Dad was too smitten to see it. But that wasn't the worst part of his announcement. "I've also been thinking about succession planning for the business." Dad continued, his tone becoming more serious. "I've made some decisions about the future." My heart started racing after 10 years of building this company together. This was the moment I've been waiting for. I expected him to discuss transitioning more responsibility to me, maybe even making me a partner. Instead, he delivered the blow that would change everything. "Selena decided that since you're not married and don't have children, you won't be inheriting the business. I'm giving it entirely to Brittany." The room spun around me. I couldn't breathe. "What?" I managed to whisper. "Brittany has a family, her husband, David, and their 2 kids. They need the financial security. She can take the business to new heights with her corporate background." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, I built this business with you. I've dedicated my entire adult life to it. How can you just continue working in your current position under Brittany as management?" He interrupted. "But the ownership goes to your sister." "That's final." I turned to Brittany, desperately hoping she'd speak up for me, show some sisterly loyalty. Instead, she sat there silently, avoiding my eyes. She was actually going to let this happen. "This isn't fair," I said, my voice breaking. "I've given everything to this business. What about my future? My dreams?" Dad's response was cold and final. "Life isn't always fair. Selena family comes first, and Brittany has a family to provide for. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could have. This wasn't just about the business. It was about a lifetime of being second best, of having my contributions minimized, of never being enough in my father's eyes." I looked at Brittany one more time, silently pleading with her to say something, anything. But she just stared at her hands, probably calculating how much money she was about to inherit. "Fine," I said quietly, standing up from the table. "If that's how you want it." I walked out of that condo knowing I'd never be back. The drive home was a blur of tears and rage. 10 years of my life wasted, 10 years of building something beautiful, only to have it ripped away. Because I'd made the choice to focus on my career instead of rushing into marriage and kids. That night, called Mom and told her everything. She was as shocked as I was. "I never thought he'd do something this cruel," she said, her voice heavy with disappointment, "to give the entire business to Brittany instead of splitting it fairly between you 2. It's unconscionable. I would have been fine with a 50-50 split." I told her through my tears, or even 60-40 in her favor, but to cut me out completely. "After everything I've done," Mom was quiet for a long moment. Then her voice became stronger, more determined. "What? Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. You've got 10 years of experience, incredible skills, and a reputation in this industry. Why don't you start your own business? Half those clients would probably follow you anyway." Her words sparked something in me. If Dad thought he could just discard me like a piece of scrap wood, he was about to learn how wrong he was. Over the past decade, I'd been smart with my money. I'd saved over $300,000, living modestly while reinvesting most of my earnings back into the business. It was more than enough to start my own company. The next morning I started making calls. I reached out to our biggest clients, the ones I personally brought in, the relationships I built over years of exceptional service. I explained the situation honestly. Dad was passing the business to my sister, and I was starting my own company. The response was overwhelming. Client after client expressed their loyalty to me personally. They'd worked with me for years, trusted my design sense, appreciated my attention to detail. Many of them had never even met Brittany. "We work with you, not your father," said Margaret Chen, commissioned 3 custom kitchens from us over the years. "If you're starting your own business, we're following you." Within a week, I had commitments from 65% of our client base. These weren't just customers. They were people who become friends, trusted me with their most important projects, who knew I'd always deliver exceptional work. Word spread quickly through our industry. Several of our most talented craftsmen approached me privately, pressing interest in jumping ship. They'd seen the writing on the wall with Brittany in charge and me gone. A business would struggle. 2 weeks later, I submitted my resignation letter to Dad. He was livid. "Can't just abandon the business now," he shouted over the phone. "We have contracts to fulfill. I'm giving you 2 weeks. Notice," I said calmly. "That's more than you gave me when you decided to hand over my life's work to someone who's never spent a day in the workshop." "This is sabotage," he screamed. "This is business," I replied, and hung up. Starting Selina's Custom Creations was simultaneously the scariest and most exhilarating thing I'd ever done. I found a perfect workshop space in an old converted warehouse, complete with natural light, high ceilings, and room to grow. The least was reasonable. The location was actually better than Dad's shop. My first few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I hired 3 of Dad's best craftsmen who decided to make the jump with me. Maria Santos, who had been with the company for 8 years, became my production manager. Jake Thompson, a master cabinet maker, brought his incredible attention to detail. And Lisa Park, a young but incredibly talented wood finisher, rounded out our core team. The clients who had committed to following me were true to their word. Within a month, I had enough orders to keep us busy for 3 months straight. My phone was ringing constantly with new inquiries. Word of mouth in the custom furniture world travels fast. My reputation for quality work preceded me. Meanwhile, I heard through the grapevine that Dad's business was struggling. Brittany had moved back from New York with her family, expecting to walk into a thriving company. But she knew nothing about woodworking, nothing about managing craftsmen, nothing about the relationships that kept clients coming back. Mom would give me updates when I called her. "Your sister has been complaining that the remaining clients are demanding to work with you. Specifically," she told me one evening, "she's finding out it's not as easy as she thought." I didn't take any pleasure in their struggles, but I felt vindicated. This business wasn't just about money. It was about relationships, craftsmanship, and reputation. You can't just inherit those things. 3 months into my new venture, I was not only surviving but thriving. We'd completed several major projects that had our clients raving about our work. I'd landed a contract with a high-end hotel chain to design custom furniture for their lobby renovations. My Instagram account had gained thousands of followers, and interior designers were reaching out from 3 states away. The most satisfying part wasn't the financial success. It was the creative freedom. For the first time in years, I was designing pieces that truly excited me, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with wood and craftsmanship, without Dad's conservative approach holding me back. I was creating furniture that was both functional and artistic. One evening, as I was finishing up a particularly complex dining table, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was from Dad. "Selina, we need to talk. The business is in trouble. And I think we can work something out. Can you come over for dinner this weekend?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it to let them figure out their own problems. But another part of me, part that still remembered working alongside Dad in his workshop, learning from him, sharing the joy of creation, wanted to hear what he had to say against my better judgment. I agreed to meet with him. Walking into Dad's condo that Saturday evening felt like stepping into a trap. The moment I saw Brittany sitting at the dining table, I knew this wasn't going to be the heartfelt apology I'd secretly hoped for. Dad looked older than I remembered, stressed and worn down. Brittany looked frustrated and offensive. The atmosphere was tense from the moment I sat down. "I'm glad you came." Dad began, his voice careful and measured. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us, and I want to find a way to move forward." I raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. "The business is struggling without you." He admitted, "We've lost more clients than we anticipated. And the ones who stayed are asking for you specifically. I think we can work out an arrangement. Here it comes." I thought the real reason for this dinner, I'm willing to forgive what happened. Dad continued, if you come back to the business, we can put this whole mess behind us and get back to building something great together. Couldn't believe what I was hearing. Forgive what happened. You mean, forgive you for stealing my life's work. Brittany jumped in, her voice sharp and accusatory. You took our clients. Selena, you sabotaged the business out of spite. I didn't take anything, I shot back. Those clients chose to work with me because I'm the one who built relationships with them. You're welcome to try to win them back. If you think you can do better. Dad held up his hand, trying to regain control of the conversation. I don't want to see the family business fail, been my life's work. And now it's how I fund my retirement. Vanessa left me because of all this financial stress. And I just want to enjoy my golden years in peace. There it was. The real motivation. This wasn't about family or forgiveness. It was about money. So stop being selfish and come back to work for your sister. Dad continued. We can all benefit from this arrangement. The audacity of it took my breath away after everything they'd put me through. They wanted me to crawl back and save them from the consequences of their own actions. I stood up, my decision crystal clear. I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with all of you. Selena? Wait. Dad started. No, I said firmly, I built my own business from nothing, once I can do it again. But I won't be manipulated into saving yours. I walked out of that condo for the second and final time. Knowing I'd never look back, the months that followed were a blur of growth and success. Word of my confrontation with Dad and Brittany spread through our industry. And surprisingly, it generated even more business. People respected the fact that I'd stood up for myself and built something new, rather than accepting unfair treatment. My business exploded. We moved to a larger facility, hired 10 more employees, and had a waiting list stretching 8 months out. I was featured in Fine Woodworking Magazine and Interior Design Quarterly. The hotel chain contract led to 3 more major commercial projects. Personal victory was even sweeter. I'd started dating again, something I'd neglected during my years of focusing solely on the business. I met David Rodriguez, an architect who understood and appreciated my passion for craftsmanship. We've been together for 8 months. I was happier than I'd been in years. Meanwhile, Dad's business continued to deteriorate. Mom kept me updated on the situation, though I'd asked her not to feel obligated to do so. They had to let go of 6 employees last month. She told me during one of our weekly calls, Brittany has been trying to manage everything. She's in over her head. She's talking about selling the business to a larger company. I felt a pang of sadness, not for Dad and Brittany, but for the employees who were suffering because of their poor decisions. Several more of their craftsmen had approached me about jobs, and I'd been able to hire a few of them. 6 months later, Mom called with the final update. They sold the business to Morrison Furniture Corporation. Your father didn't get much for it. Apparently, the client base and reputation had deteriorated too much. Most of what he did get went to legal fees from the divorce from Vanessa. I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief that the saga was finally over, sadness for the loss of what had once been a beautiful family business. But mostly I felt proud. I'd taken the worst betrayal of my life and turned it into the best thing that ever happened to me. Today, Selena's Custom Creations employs 35 people and generates over $12 million in annual revenue. We've expanded into commercial furniture design and have clients across the country. But more importantly, it's a place where craftsmanship is valued, where employees are treated fairly, where every piece that leaves our workshop is something we're proud to put our name on. I'm planning to propose to David next month. We're talking about starting a family, and I smile when I think about teaching my future children the craft I love so much. They'll grow up knowing that hard work, integrity, and standing up for yourself are the real foundations of success. As for Dad and Brittany, I occasionally hear updates through mutual friends. Dad ended up taking a job with Morrison Furniture, working in the same workshop he once owned. But now, as an employee rather than the boss, Brittany moved back to New York and returned to corporate accounting. Sometimes I wonder if they ever think about what could have been if they treated me fairly from the beginning. Then I look around at the business I've built, the team I've assembled, and the life I've created. And I realize their betrayal was actually the greatest gift they could have given me. It forced me to discover just how strong I really am. And that's a lesson worth more than any inheritance could ever be.